Good afternoon, everyone. So, I'm Martha. I'm the Youth Services Librarian at the... Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the Youth Services Librarian at the Cranston Public Library. My name at the Auburn branch, my name is Martha. So we're going to let everybody come in, give everybody a second to get the technology started. Once again, I'm Martha, and I'm the Youth Services Librarian at the Auburn branch of the Cranston Public Library. And I'm going to be talking to you today about the Latino Books Month Rhode Island nominees for 2020. So you can see them right behind me. These are all of the titles. We're going to be discussing grades 6 through 8 and 9 through 12. So just these two lines today. Okay? So I hope you're all ready to hear about some great books. I'm going to talk about all of the nominees. So for some of them, I'm just going to read you a quick description. And for some of them, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about them. Okay? So we're going to get started. I want to tell you a little bit about the Rhode Island Latino Books Month nominees and how you can get involved. I'm actually on the committee that votes on the nominees that you can read and vote on your favorite. So you can get involved by reading them online via ebook. They're all on the eZone, and we're going to have the link in the comments. So if you're interested in reading the books online, you can do that. Now that we have curbside pickup, you might also be able to get a couple of them via curbside pickup as well. So if you want to know more about that, you should go to our website. And you should vote for your favorite by May 29th. There is still time. You might be able to squeeze a book or two in. If you've already read 3 of them, you're all set. You just need to go online, and that link will also be in the comments where you can vote. And if you don't have time to read those, I also say just choose another age level and just read 3 books and vote, because there's so many great titles for everyone. You can check out the Rhode Island Latino Books Month Facebook page as well. We've been doing readings on Thursdays in the afternoon as well. So you can also just tune in and watch somebody reading those books, and that would still count for the books that you're reading. So if you want to do any of those things, please see the comments, and I hope that you'll all get involved and help us choose the best books for teens and other kids, okay? So I'm going to get started. The first ones we're going to be talking about are all of the 6 through 8 titles, okay? And the first one here, some of them I have the book and some of them I have on my iPad. This first one I've got on my iPad. It's The Other Half of Happy by Rebecca Balcarcel. All right, can you see that there? And you might be able to see that it's a Pour Belpré honor book, so you already know it's going to be great, right? This one's a realistic fiction title, and I'll read you a little description, okay? Quijana, a biracial girl who's navigating between the Anglo and Guatemalan sides of her family, a burgeoning crush, and a cool new friend, and trying to figure out what's going on with her little brother, who is becoming remote and hard to reach, all while trying to determine just who she is. And something I really liked about this book is one of the first descriptions she does is a description of her house and how her house is a little wonky and the floors are like sloped so that if you rolled a ball, like it would go down the slope. And I just think that's a kind of a really cool description. I really enjoyed that part of the book. So again, The Other Half of Happy. And I think it's a really nice realistic fiction title if you're into realistic fiction. The next one is also on my iPad, Charley, Hernandez, and the League of Shadows by Ryan Calejo. And this is one of those books that I recommend just by saying, if you like Rick Riordan and Percy Jackson, you'll probably enjoy this one. This is a middle grade fantasy inspired by Hispanic folklores, legends, and myths from the Iberian Peninsula and Central and South America. And it's about Charley Hernandez, as you can probably guess from the title, and the adventures he goes on once he realizes that the myths that he grew up hearing weren't really myths. They weren't stories, they were real life. And so he starts to encounter them, and it's all about him figuring out what he's going to do now that he knows his reality has changed. So the next one, first couple are all on my iPad. The next one is Marcus Vega, Doesn't Speak Spanish by Pablo Cartaya. And I bet a lot of you have already read this book because I think it was on the RIMSBA list last year for 2020 maybe. I know it was on some sort of awards list for Rhode Island. So maybe some of you have read it. It's a realistic fiction title as well. And it's about Marcus Vega. Once again, name of the kid in the title. There you go. So you don't forget who the main character is, for sure. He's a big and tall guy, and people sort of assume he's going to be a bully because he looks like what they think a bully looks like. But he's really not, and he's just a good brother at home. However, his looks sort of get him into trouble, and he ends up getting into a fight. And his parents, his family, decides that they're going to go to Puerto Rico for a trip. Now, he doesn't speak any Spanish, and so he's in Puerto Rico, and he doesn't speak any Spanish, and I think that a lot of kids can relate to that. There's a lot of Latinx kids who are definitely Latinx, but they don't speak Spanish. They were never taught Spanish when they were kids, and so it can be difficult for them. While he's there, he also decides that he wants to find his father, because from what he knows about his dad, who doesn't live with them, he's in Puerto Rico somewhere. So he starts going off to look for his father. And will he find him? You'll have to read the book to find out, right? So that's a title you can pick up if you think it sounds interesting. I finally have a print book to show you. This one is Sal and Gabi Break the Universe by Carlos Hernandez. Look at that. And this is another one that I will tell you that you will enjoy if you like Rick Riordan books, because it's Rick Riordan Presents is actually the imprint. So you already know that if you like Percy Jackson, this is going to be a similar title, right? So this story is a fantasy story, right? You know that's going to be a fantasy story. And it's a Cuban-American inspired fantasy. One of the characters is a magician, and that's fun. There's fitting in school themes. There's a possible end of the universe because, obviously, right? And it starts with the question, who put raw chicken in Yasmini's locker? And one of these characters on the cover is Yasmini. So you can just get excited from there. I mean, don't you want to know who put raw chicken in Yasmini's locker? I mean, ugh, that does not sound pleasant. So read for more details. Okay, so the next title that we've got is Silver Meadows Summer. And this one is by Emma Othigai. And she writes all kinds of books for kids, teens, everybody. And look at that cover. I just really like that cover. This is really on theme for the kind of weather that we've been getting, the summery weather. So it'll be a good title to read for summer if you're interested. This is a realistic fiction title as well. And I really enjoyed this one. I just like to tell you which ones are my favorites, just because I didn't get to read all of them, but the ones that I did read, some of them I liked more than others. So this one's about Carolina Ricardo. I hit the man. Oop. All right. Her dad loses his job. And so they have to move from Puerto Rico to upstate New York. So you can imagine the culture shock that happens from Puerto Rico, which is an island, and it's a very different kind of place than upstate New York, which is very rural. She just sort of doesn't get what's going on when she moves over there. And they move in with her cousin's family, and she has to get along with her cousin Gabriela, who she doesn't really like. They don't really get along at first. She seems kind of standoffish, but they are forced to go to a summer camp together. So she does make friends with Jennifer, who's not her cousin, and they end up going out into the woods, which is something they're not supposed to do, alone, and they go to this abandoned house, and they find it in the woods, and they determine that they want to make it into an artist space because both of them have bonded over being artists and enjoying creating things. So they just start fixing up this house, making it curtains and putting little pieces of art in and doing nature crafts and stuff like that. And it really becomes a refuge for them. but will somebody find out where they're going and what they're doing? You'll have to read the book to find out what happens there. Will she end up getting along with her cousin? You'll have to read the book to find out. I'm trying to get you guys just interested enough that you read the book, right? So I won't tell you any more about Silver Meadows Summer. We'll move on to The Moon Within. So The Moon Within by Aida Salazar. And this is actually one of the titles that I haven't read yet, but I really, really, really want to read. As soon as I can get myself into my next book. It should be this one. Can't really see the title because of the glare too much, but it's a beautiful cover, with a beautiful girl with the moon behind her. It's a really excellent title. So this is another realistic fiction title. This is a coming-of-age story, and part of the story is the main character's name is Callie. Callie is starting to figure out how to interact with her friend who is gender fluid. And at first she's just like sort of not sure how she's supposed to treat her friend. And it's sort of figuring out, is her friend the same as she thought? Is her friend different? And kind of navigating that. Which you can always have that, right? With your friends is sort of like, are you who I think you are? Do you want me to treat you the way that I've been treating you, or is something different? But this one's specific about realizing that her friend is gender fluid and how she should treat her. The other big part of this book is about something called a moon ceremony that her mother insists that she do. And a moon ceremony is something that happens once you start to get your period. So this book talks about menstruation a lot, which I actually think is really excellent. I think there's a culture of not talking about periods because they're supposed to be gross and icky, but literally half of the population has periods. So I think everybody should talk about them. And so that's one of the reasons I think this book is super important. Everybody's got them. At least half of everybody's got them. And so we should talk about it, right? But this particular moon ceremony that I'm talking about is an ancestral Mexica ritual that her community has reclaimed. But Sally decides that she doesn't want to participate. Probably because people in United States of America in current day pretty much think that talking about periods is gross, right? So she doesn't really want to participate. So I think this is a really exciting title. It's on my to-read list for sure, and I hope that some of you guys will pick it up. Also, if you are interested in reading some of these titles, and like I said before, you can get them from curbside pickup, I will, the second this is over, check in all of these titles so that they're available. So if you get off of this video and you decide you want one of these, I work at Auburn, so they'll be available at Auburn. So if you want these physical titles, just let us know, okay? Because I can get them to you. So the next one that we're going to talk about is actually going to be a grades 9 through 12 book. So we've talked about all of the 6 through 8 books, and we're going to move on to grades 9 through 12. But obviously, read whatever is good for you, but these are in those categories, okay? So the next title is on my iPad. And just by looking at it, you can kind of figure out a little bit what this book's going to be like. It's called 5 Midnights, and it's by Anne de Villa Cardinal. And you can just see my screen in that, huh? Oh, well. The tagline on the top says, monsters only come when they're called. Ooh. So you can tell this is going to be a scary book. And what I'm going to say about this book is, if you've been following Alyssa, who has been doing the book chats, she has called herself a chicken. I will join her in the ranks of the chickens everywhere. I do not read scary titles. We ask our other coworker, Elise, to read all the scary books for us. So, not going to read that book, haven't read that book. Will read you a description, but will not be reading or engaging with that book. So, here's the description for this title that I will never ever read. If Lupe Davila and Javier Utiere can survive each other's company, together they can solve a series of grisly murders sweeping through Puerto Rico. But the clues lead them out of the real world and into the realms of myths and legends. And if they want to catch the killer, they'll have to step into the shadows to see what's lurking there. Murderer or monster? Dun, dun, dun. So, here's the title, cover once again. Please feel free to read if you are interested. I will not, but you enjoy. So, the next title is going to be less scary. This is Blanca y Roja, and it's by AnnaMarie Nickelmore. And this is a great cover. And I kind of want to show you, I just looking before this started, do you see, I just discovered this. Do you see an animal here on the cover? I did not see this until literally just now. So if you can tell, that's a swan, okay? And this is sort of, I don't know, like a flower type thing. It's a really beautiful cover, excuse me. Oh yeah, there's another one down here. There's another swan beak down here. So look at that cool cover. I'm obsessing over the covers because usually I show books to people, but I don't show the covers like I am now. So I've been looking at them a lot. So this one is a fairy tale retelling and sort of a fantasy. So if you've ever heard of Snow White and Rose Red, this is a retelling. And in this book, the main characters are the Delcisne girls. And they have never just been sisters, they've always been rivals. They've been pitted against each other because in this story, due to a local family curse, one of them will be turned into a swan. Yeah. So neither of them want that. They would like to stay human, please, thank you. But they both have some preconceived notions about who is going to end up being the swan. So Blanca is obedient and graceful, and Roja is vicious and manipulative. So there's sort of ideas that, you know, if you've heard of like white being like pure and red being sort of more like evil, like the idea of that, they sort of fall into the idea of thinking that, you know, Roja might get turned into a swan because she's evil or mean or whatever, or alternatively, like, maybe she will, like, trick her sister into getting, you know, turned into the swan, but it ends up being way more complicated and way more interesting than that. This is just a beautiful book. It's just very well told. I really liked reading it. This isn't usually my sort of thing, but I definitely enjoyed it. And there's some romance in there, one with a boy and one with a trans boy who's also a boy, obviously. And both of these local boys get drawn into the game, and it complicates things. So they sort of mix things up. So things that they thought were going to happen don't happen. And strange things like one of them turns into the trees and stuff like that. So there's just some like weird witchy stuff going on, which I can totally get into. So they're beautiful poetic descriptions of the town and everything that's happening. There's a lot of nature that's described as well. So if you're into like fantasy and like lush description, you're going to totally enjoy this one. All right, so the next one is on my iPad. It's We Set the Dark on Fire. And if you haven't heard about this title, it's gotten a lot of buzz. It's been very, very popular. So here it is, if you haven't seen this cover. It's by Taylor K. Mejia. And you can see it says, "Let Rebellion Burn." Oh, exciting. So this is the one, if you've already heard about it, this is the one where every rich guy gets 2 wives. And one of the wives is for having children, and one of the wives is for running the household. And that's how this society is done. This is definitely like a dystopian type of novel, I would call it. So Daniela is the main character. In the beginning of the book, she graduates from Meadows School for girls, and basically when you graduate, it means that you get a husband, okay? So she gets a husband, and she goes out to live in the countryside, and she gets a super rich, super powerful husband, okay? So she and another girl from her school end up becoming wives to this husband. So she has to decide about whether or not she can trust this girl. They've always sort of been rivals. They've always sort of not gotten along because they were both sort of top of their class type of thing. And she's really most afraid that this other woman is going to reveal her secret, which is basically that her parents forged her papers when she got into school. So she's not who she says she is. She's really, poor and not as, well-born as she's been telling people, right? And so her parents did this basically so she could get out of poverty and so that she could rise above her station. And so she doesn't want anybody to know about that, and she doesn't want anybody to know like where her parents are, who they are, so that, they can get in trouble, right? So she starts to, get into this intrigue where somebody starts talking to her about spying for rebellion. And she's just sort of like, I don't want anybody to know about me and my secret. Well, they sort of start to threaten her a little bit about that. And she has to decide, not only is she going to take part in this, but is she going to, is she going to let her parents come to harm, or is she going to help this rebellion, and is she into the rebellion or not? And there's lots and lots of intrigue. There's also some pretty wonderful lesbian romance in this book. I'm not going to tell you with who because that would be ruining it. But it's a really great story, and I definitely suggest it. I think it's a really fun book to read. So I'll bring that up again because I talked a long time. We Set the Dark on Fire. Here it is. All right. The next one just might be my favorite. So it's called Don't Date Rosa Santos, and it's by Nina Moreno. And look at that cover. It's so cute. All right. So this one it's got a curse. It's got romance. It's got college decisions. What more could you possibly want? It's just so much fun. So another book with the name in the title. You can't forget her name. It's Rosa Santos. Rosa has just finished her first couple of years of college, and she's ready to transfer to another college. She's been in community college, and she just isn't sure where she wants to go yet. So she's trying to figure that out. And then she's also sort of living with this idea that her family is cursed. So her family, all of the women in her family are supposedly cursed so that any man that they fall in love with is basically doomed. So what do you think happens? She meets a boy, right? Obviously, because if there's a curse, she has to meet a boy, right? Yes, I'm glad you're coming with me on this one. So she's trying to stay focused on her college decision and all of that, but, she starts falling in love with this Alex Aquino, this mysterious boy with tattoos of the ocean, and his family owns the marina. So there's a romance there, and she's starting to try to deal with like, oh, can I be in love with him if there's this curse, and can I break the curse, right? It ends up with a trip to Cuba because her family is from Cuba, and this is set right about the time when Obama had reopened the ability to even go to Cuba, right? Before that, you couldn't even go. So it was very exciting, and she really wanted to go. She finds some of her family resolve over there and figures some things out and doesn't figure some things out. And it's just a really fun rom-com. I really enjoyed it, and I think everybody should read this one. This one's also kind of like summery, so it's like a good summer book if you just want to sort of get away and, read something strange and different. I really liked this one. The next title I have here is called Undocumented, and this is a really cool, interesting book. It's called Undocumented, A Worker's Fight, and it's by Duncan Tonatiuh. And this book I'm going to have to just show you because it's very cool. It's in a format. It's called the Ancient Mishek Codex Accordion Fold format. That's a lot to say. So basically what that means is when you're reading a book, you open it this way, okay? Reading, reading, reading. And then when you get to the end, you read it the other way. Did you see that? Does that make sense? So it's hard to hold because it's literally, it's an accordion, guys. See? So I don't know if this is available on ebook format. I think it probably is in some way, but I really suggest getting your hands on the actual book because it's just so cool. Check it out before it gets destroyed by somebody. I really liked this one. I thought it was really well written. As you can guess, it's about an undocumented worker, right? So the story here is about Juan, who grows up in Mexico and migrates to the U.S., working as an undocumented immigrant in restaurants. And he starts working on workers' rights. He realizes that undocumented immigrants have virtually no rights and they're not well treated, and so he wants them to be treated better, right? So it's really well done. I really like the format. It's got beautiful illustrations. It's definitely worth checking out. Plus, it's a graphic novel. You can read this definitely in one sitting. So if you need to knock 3 out, you can definitely get this one read by May 29th. No problem. So, I've been talking a long time. There's a lot of books, but we've only got one left. So, thanks for sticking with me. The last one is called The Grief Keeper, and this is another one that I think was really popular. Alexandre Vilas wrote this one, and it's a real weird book, guys. It's a really heavy book, but it's worth reading. I really think this is a beautiful book. It's an incredible title. So let me tell you a little bit about it. This one I'd also classify as dystopian. It's very much set in a world very similar to our own, but with technology that we don't have, but I wouldn't call it sci-fi necessarily. It doesn't really fit the sci-fi genre, but you can decide what genre it is when you read it, because that doesn't really matter. So Marisol and her sister have fled El Salvador after her brother was murdered and her younger sister was put in some serious danger. So when they get to the U.S., they don't want to get deported, and it looks like that might happen. So Marisol ends up making a deal with an immigration officer, and they say that they can both stay if she agrees to become a grief keeper. And this technology that they have that makes somebody become a grief keeper is basically that you can get a chip implanted in you that makes you feel the grief of somebody else. Wild, right? So she is being implanted with this chip in order to take away some grief from this other wealthy daughter of somebody very well connected who is experiencing a great deal of grief after she just lost somebody. So it's really fascinating because she's taking on the actual emotion of somebody else. So they do this so that she can stay in the country, but as she starts to get to know this girl who's going through some really hard stuff, you know, I mean, if you don't have somebody else take on your grief if there isn't a reason, she starts to get more and more intimately involved with this girl, and there starts to become a romance. And there's a lot that Marisol has to deal with, having come from El Salvador, where being gay is really not okay, and she's starting to deal with these feelings in America, and she's sort of trying to figure out how she wants to navigate them as well, because she is literally feeling this person's grief, right? And sort of learning things about her that she wouldn't otherwise learn, right? You don't just like learn about people's super horrible trauma. So it's about navigating all of that. It's also, as you can imagine, about the physical and mental toll that undocumented immigrants are expected to take on in this country. I'm making that line between the book and reality. It's not necessarily there overtly, but I thought it was really, really interesting, and I thought it said some really interesting stuff about today's America. So I think this is a really fantastic book. I hope some of you guys will check it out. I really thought this one was one of my favorites for sure. So, like I said, been talking for a while. I hope you check out some of these books. I really enjoyed them, and I'm sure that you will too. All right,